Welcome to the SayNoMas podcast. I'm your host, Sarah B. And today I'm joined by the amazing Dr. Zemed Berhe. But before we dive in, just a quick heads up. This episode may touch on some deep emotions, tough experiences, or sensitive topics. So listener discretion is advised. Take what you need, leave what you don't, and let's get into it. How is that working in the VA? It's a lot of
Very rewarding, but very challenging.
What did you see?
And also eye-opening.
Yeah.
I think I may have walked in with a lot of assumptions because, these are veterans.
Yeah.
And depending on what your political affiliation may be or your thoughts of, our country being in war or, there's just a lot of, I think, thoughts I had. But I definitely, it was an eye-opening experience, both from like a personal, on a humane level, but also just kind of recognizing a lot of the cultural disparities as it relates to healthcare and utilization of healthcare services amongst veterans and specifically Black veterans. I was also, New Jersey was my first, working at the New Jersey VA was my first like introductory experience to the VA system. And so a lot of my patients were Black veterans.
Yeah.
And so, it's kind of interesting to hear their stories, but then also to learn the dynamics of, what populations end up more experiencing combat trauma.
If I may ask, what population ended up?
Well, I think generally speaking, what we know about folks in the military who get recruited out of like high school, are traditionally folks from impoverished, poor neighborhoods, typically Black and brown men and women, and so you see a preponderance of that, and I think that you see the level of diversity in all realms. I've saw it in my work, in working in the VA system, and you also see the change of demographics as you shift from one city to another, right? So even like I worked in New Jersey, but I also worked in Brooklyn, and the demographics were very different. Like Brooklyn, I served a lot of older veterans, older white veterans, and so it all shifts depending on what city you are working in, and depending on what type of department you're working for too.
So you went from school out there, and you came down here about 7 years ago, right?
Oh no, I moved out here in 2015.
Okay, great. And then did you automatically just start working with the SDSU?
No.
You took their program, right?
So I did I moved back after I graduated with my doctorate.
Yeah.
And then I did my postdoc fellowship at the Long Beach VA.
Oh,
and that
okay.
was from 2015 to 2016. And then I was doing private practice work for a little bit. I was unemployed for a little bit. I was doing private practice work while I was studying for my license exam. And then got hired here in 2017, September 2017, which made me move back to San Diego.
That's dope. So since you got hired, I see you guys have been doing a lot of women empowerment and a lot of like safe spaces for African Americans at SDSU.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So back in I'll talk about it like in a holistic picture. But back in 2019, actually, let me first say that as like one of the only, I am the only Black psychologist right now within the department. But when I started, I definitely knew that I wanted to work and serve underrepresented students. And so initially I started just trying to really cultivate and build a relationship with what is now the Black Resource Center.
Yeah.
So, creating programming around mental health, specifically for Black students, from the range of topics from stress management to understanding racial trauma.
Yeah.
So since then, it's really expanded the work that I've done. So I do like my typical job description, which is to provide individual and group therapy, crisis interventions, but then a lot of my work too now is working with the Black Resource Center. And offering wellness check-ins, and so what that means is I have office hours there.
Let's talk about it, right?
Yep.
That's like a wellness check-in? Or talk it out, yeah.
Talk it out.
Okay.
So that's wellness check-ins where I have office hours at the BRC, so anytime a student wants to just connect and talk to myself, they can, and it's a really great way for students who typically would not go to our center, the counseling psych services, or not know how to access services on campus. that, they view that as their home. Oftentimes students refer to the BRC as their home, and so it's a great way for them to get connected to those services, and for me to be able to, for them to access the services, but also if student needs to be coordinated with a higher level of care or need to be referred off campus to see a therapist, then I could do that.
Yeah, okay.
And then the Women of Color Empowerment Group, my colleague and I, Dr. Coco Nishi, in 2019, we created a Women of Color Empowerment Group just because through the, one of the roles that we have is doing outreaches on campus with a number of different groups that we work with, different centers that we work with, and we just had a lot of experiences where women of color were, either we were seeing them in therapy or they were coming and kind of expressing how they didn't have a confidential, safe space to discuss issues pertaining to intersectionality or, experiences of racism, sexism through that lens. And so we thought it was a great opportunity to create a group that really focused and provided a confidential, safe space for women of color. And so it's open to undergraduate, graduate, and graduate students. And we've been running that group now for 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know that's helped a lot of people, for sure.
Thank you. I mean, we really have gotten a lot of great testimonials and feedback, and honestly, the students are phenomenal. Like, what they're consistent, they're engaged. We really try to elicit as much like what topics they want to talk about, what are some things that are pertinent in their life, from the impact of social media and like body image.
That's a big one. That is really a big one.
To like, just different facets of our identities as women of color, and how you kind of, at every juncture, right? Whether you're a college student, whether you get into, a corporate job or just living life, right? How you contend with very different experiences than our white counterparts.
Yeah, we definitely do. That's actually really sad though. I feel like in 2025, we still have different experiences than them, Yeah. And I feel like we're always constantly trying to like help them understand what we're experiencing,
Definitely.
And I think now everyone's like, you know what, we just don't have time for that anymore. We're just gonna live, and I don't think we need to explain anymore, And
I want to say like the focus is on empowering those young women, right? Because I know there's different thoughts about like, why do y'all need a space to yourself? Yeah. But it's really like driven to really empower these women wherever they're at in life, and whatever we meet them at where they're at and what they need. Yeah. And from that group, we really had a really dope opportunity to apply for some grants. So since I think it's been 2 years now, we have been able to apply for these grants, secure funding. I mean, I think we've gone up to 80,000 now. And
what, girl? Clap it up for yourself and your team. Like, that's amazing.
Bringing in just dope, phenomenal women of color, from authors to speakers, not only within mental health, but just like across the gamut. And that's really just to expose our students and our women that we work with just a range of what your life can look like, what are the challenges, how to navigate certain things, and to just bring attention, right? Yeah. On a different platform.
I like that. Yeah. I'm happy because you're doing that. I would like to know, like, what made you get into this field? I mean, I know your history and your background, but when was you like, hey, you know what? I want to help people in the mental health world. Or was it from like your background? Was it your upbringing? Like, what drove you to this?
That's a good question.
Because it's a lot, Because
it is.
You take in a lot of people's energies and emotions and traumas too, Yeah. And you gotta find your balance in between it all. And like, even when I sit and talk to a friend and let them vent, that affects me,
Of course.
So let alone you're like a psychologist. So it's just like, that's heavy,
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten a lot of training.
Yeah.
And doing personal work. And it's not, every day is different. And sometimes I'm better at, keeping things intact in other days. But, I mean, I think when I think back to it, I think I always was like a very curious, investigative child. Like my parents, my older sister always say, like, you used to talk a lot and ask all these questions. So I definitely see that part of me, and I think that's what really started like I can remember as early as like elementary and middle school, just always being very curious about like how the brain works, different personalities,
Okay.
and as cliches as it sound, like always wanting to help people.
Yeah.
Like, and I think it was middle school, there was like a peer counselors program, and I think that was like my, I guess, introduction to like, oh, what counseling is. Not that we were doing counseling anybody. But in high school, I took AP psychology, and I
Okay.
think that is what solidified, like, oh, there is actually there is a field. And he was just I don't remember his name, my teacher, but he was just really great at like breaking down psychology in terms where a high school student could really understand it, in terms of breaking down the brain. Like I remember learning like about the frontal lobe and all of these different, like the anatomy of the brain, right?
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of things I remember from myself, so that stuck out to me.
Remember to know.
Yeah, and then I think, I just majored in psychology, and I had a really amazing mentor too at Cal State Fullerton, Dr. Stokes, who was the first Black psychologist I had ever met, and I think she was really pivotal in like helping me kind of see what it is I can do. Like part of the beauty of my job is that I could do a lot with my role, right? Like I could teach, I could do research, I could do private practice if I wanted, I could do consulting. There's just so much that we can do. And so I really do think she exposed me at I was in college, like my first, second year. I think I took her to class, African American psychology. And for me, it was just like, oh my God, I wanna kind of just sit by you and just learn and gain your wisdom. And she really did. She took me under her wings, and I was like, I'm part of like different research projects very early on. I was co-facilitating a group with her, like for women who.
Oh, she took you under her wing for sure.
Yeah, we're survivors of intimate partner violence. And I'm like, looking back at it now, especially because I'm a faculty, I'm like, wow, no one really does that. To
really?
that degree. I mean, they do.
Yeah.
But like not to the degree that she did. I mean, she went all out.
It sounds like it, yeah.
There was a few of us who were Black women who were in psychology.
She definitely helped plant the seed too.
Yeah, she really did. And I think from there it just kind of solidified what I wanted to do.
That's great. So as you said, you were young and you were so curious about the brain and you just wanted to help people, which is not a cliche.
Yeah.
It's my brother actually, I had told him about my nonprofit, Survivors of Joyce, and I was like, I kind of want to help people, but I think it's corny. He was like, the world tells you that, Sarah, but we're supposed to help people.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
But I'm like, then why do I feel like it's corny? He was like, because everyone's telling you that because everyone's hurt. And I was like, maybe you're right. I don't know, maybe. But then when I finally stepped into it. Yeah, they judging. Yeah, but I was just so like, I want to feel welcome. I want to be with everybody else.
Yeah.
And no one's helping me. But back to your childhood, I'm really curious. So you're East African, right?
I'm Eritrean.
Eritrean. Woo, woo, woo.
Yeah.
Hey. So growing up in your household, did you guys ever have like mental health talks at all?
No, but it's really interesting. We grew up, my siblings and I, my father was actually really good at, instead of like punishment or like yelling at us if we did something bad, he would really like to sit us down and understand why we did something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that.
And I like to think that that was kind of his way, working with the resources he had, of really trying to understand, like, well, why did you behave that way? Or like, was there some emotional underpinning, even though I don't think he may have known or had that language.
Yeah.
But I do think just having that early connection, right? Even though I wasn't able to like put a language to it, or my dad wasn't able to say like, how are you feeling? I do think there was those types of check-ins, right? That I had a father figure who would want to like really sit down and understand my experiences, right? My world as a child, I guess. But no, like generally speaking, I don't think there was any conversation about mental health.
Yeah.
No.
I feel like most families actually, and it's just not the African Americans too. I've noticed it's the Asian population, a lot of like white families too. Like it's almost every race. They're not really talking about mental health.
No, I think we're not. I mean, it's not discussed like it's not discussed at the familial level, right, between parent and child. But then like, it's not even normalized in schools. Like I think children as young as in kindergarten should be learning about their emotions, their feelings, and they do. They do. Like, it's quite amazing. I'm a parent now, so I have a different lens and perspective on it too. But even like, my son is in daycare and the way that they're introducing, like, we have big feelings and being able to express, like, when you're frustrated. I'm like, that was not my world.
Yeah,
I
no.
don't have that frame of mind, you know?
We got yelled at. Why are you acting like that? Like, you know, and it's
Yeah.
something's wrong with you, or
Yeah.
just like I remember my family, my mom thought I was just like on drugs because I was so outspoken. I had this really big personality.
Yeah.
She would go buy like a test, like a urine test from Vaughn's, and like, you're gonna take this, and I'm like, dude, I'm not on, ma'am, I'm just hyperactive.
That was the paranoia of Habesha parents.
Yeah, they're like, drugs is the end of the all.
Yeah,
I was
for
our
sure.
parents did not want that. And I understand that, but like looking back, I'm like, that caused a lot of anxiety in my life, you know? And I don't think my parents, family, whatever, they didn't realize that, you know?
Well, and I do think, like, honestly, even in doing, I think part of this was also why I was interested, was like being bicultural, you know, having our bicultural identity, being Eritrean and American, but also Eritrean and Black, and kind of straddling those two worlds and learning more about our identities. You know, I think that also put in a sense of curiosity of wanting to know more about me, but also like the way we were raised. But, you know, even our parents have dealt with their own forms of traumas that they've carried on, and I think most of them have, you know, are just living and trying to survive in our own survival mode. But oftentimes, you know, they're parenting with the resources that they have. Like, part of it is just sometimes assimilating to different things that the American culture kind of, you know, fear mongers at. And but I also do think that sometimes it's just they weren't taught. They didn't have that space. So then how do you raise a child and teach them what you don't know?
Exactly. And you can't really fault them at
No,
that.
there's not a normalization of it.
Yeah,
Right?
you got to show grace, honestly, moments like that when you realize, like, well, my family actually fled a war.
Absolutely.
And my mom she's exposed to so much trauma. So looking back now, I'm like, I can't even hold nothing against you.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
think about that all the time now.
Yeah.
Like, my dad was in the war.
No,
you know,
literally.
Like, as a soldier. And I can't, like, there was so many times when I was working in the VA, like, I had emotional breakdowns. Like, I could never imagine that my dad went through this. Now I'm working with veterans, and my father has had to carry this, not ever once showing any signs. So it's deep.
Yeah.
You know, and so
It is
I
deep.
have learned also in my big age now to have grace in so many ways.
Yeah, definitely. Let's touch back on survival mode for some folks and listeners who don't know what is living in survival mode, because I just found out about this about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I was in constant survival mode. So if you could break it down and kind of what it
Sure.
means and maybe give some examples.
Yeah. So sometimes when people have experienced trauma, or like a continual perpetuation of stress, right? Your adaptation is to just keep going, right? To tuck everything underneath the rug, to avoid. And so if I can touch on trauma really quickly.
Yeah, of course.
Trauma is just like, it's just a psychological wound. It's our own like emotional responses to when something has happened that is distressing. So it could be something as small as a car accident. It could be someone experiencing sexual trauma or being sexually assaulted. It can be child abuse, right? And so our brain, there are things that happen, right? There is the parasympathetic and sympathetic system that we physiologically, there's arousal that happens to us when we experience a traumatic event. And so for some people, you know, because our minds and bodies are fairly resilient, right? But oftentimes when the body doesn't, or the mind doesn't go back into homeostasis, right? Which is like a balanced state.
Okay.
What happens is we remain elevated. So it's like the radar has gone off, right? And the lever doesn't know how to go back.
Is it like fight or flight?
Yes.
Like you're just constantly
so
in that?
the fight or flight system is elevated,
Okay,
right? It's
gotcha.
activated, I should say.
Okay.
And when that's not regulated, when the body is not regulated itself, you're just at that level, right? And so that's a survival mode.
Oh my gosh. That can take a toll on your health, I feel like, and your actual like
absolutely.
physical well-being.
Yeah,
I feel like.
absolutely.
Okay. What are some signs of that? Because I think I've experienced that. I don't know if that can affect like weight gaining or maybe.
100%. There's so many. I mean, there's so many signs and symptoms, and it depends on what type of trauma you experience.
Yeah.
But
We're also different.
It's just stress, right?
Yeah.
The chronic level of stress and what happens to our minds and our bodies over time. And so, yes, some symptoms. So if you engage in avoidance, meaning like I don't have time to deal with this. I'm just going to keep it moving. Right? What tends to happen? If you think about it like it's a wound, over time that wound, you try to put a Band-Aid over it, and it just, the blood is just seeping out. Right?
You're not giving it time to scab and heal or nothing.
No, you're
That
just
is
covering
wild.
it.
Yeah. You broke that down really well. It's like you can
thank
visualize
you.
it. Yeah, no, literally, I'm like,
Yeah.
that is wild.
And I mean, it's so complex and even more complicated depending on what your trauma is, right?
Yeah.
But overall, it's just the constant exposure to stress and what that does. It's like the wear and tear over time, right? And so if you constantly avoid it, you're just on autopilot, right?
Yeah.
You're just gonna keep it moving, white knuckling it. But
that shows up in your life, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Because from my own personal experience, I don't know about everyone else, but I was like an alcoholic right after this. Like the first year, I was just a drunk. And I kept pushing off the pain, and I didn't want to deal with it.
You were
and
escaping it.
I was escaping it, and it was bad. To the point where I'm like, I gotta go to AA meetings. And then you go to one, you're like, I'm not coming back to this, because this, what is this? I was like, oh, wait, hold on. To stand up and be like, hey, my name is Sarah, and I'm an alcoholic, is like, I was like, nah, God didn't want this for me. You know, but
that takes so much courage, Sarah.
Dude, that's a lot. Really?
Yes.
I don't think about it like that.
To be so vulnerable in those moments, yes, that takes a lot of courage. Imagine those who are just suffering in silence and not able to even go to an AA meeting and just at home, just drinking away, or not feeling like they're worthy of getting help or asking for help.
Yeah, that was a lot of me asking for help. I didn't want to ask, but like shout out to my therapist. She was great, and she would do like a reward system with me. And it's funny because I've never shared this very publicly, besides like close friends and family.
Thank you for sharing.
Of course, yeah. So she would be like, "What's your favorite candy?" And I'm like, "Girl, I'm bougie. I like C's candy." She was like, "You're like an old white lady." I'm like, "Yeah, California brutal is my thing." She's like, "Okay, well after every 3 days that you don't drink, go get yourself some C's candy." And I was like, sure, because it was every day. I wouldn't eat. Like, I would literally spend money on alcohol, and I would just drink my days away. And it was cool, because guess what? You know, my pain, it wanted company. And I'd get other friends that are going through, like, trauma. So now we're all just trauma bonding, drinking. Drinking and smoking. And
So you were just stuffing the feelings away.
Stuffing it. But then I started getting the candy. And then I remember one time I didn't have a car, and I catch the bus to get C's in Claremont. I'm like, man, I'm not doing this. I'm going to get a bottle. And I went to the store, and I was like, you need this? Why do you need this? So you were just about to catch an hour and a half bus ride. Just go get the candy. And I went and got the candy, and I went home and I cried. Because I was like, why am I so attached to this bottle? Like,
because it was your form of coping, right?
Yeah, it really was. But it was
an unhealthy coping strategy, but that was the only way in that moment that you were able to cope.
You know what? And looking back, I'm a little upset thinking about it now, because I'm like, I wish my insurance, I had like Medi-Cal, you know, it's like low income insurance. And they were trying to offer me one therapy once a month. And I'm like, oh, I don't get boosted up because I got shot. They're like, no, this is COVID, baby. Like, we are stuck with
this was all through
COVID.
COVID?
Yeah, it's 2020. The end of 2020, the beginning of 2021.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, they didn't care. I was like, no, seriously, you guys? No discount for survivors, anything? Nothing. They did not care.
That was the worst time to go through anything like that.
Worst time ever. Even being shot, my mom couldn't come into the hospital.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Then they said I had COVID in the hospital, and I was like, how? What? It was just too much. But it was like the worst time for you to go through trauma was like during COVID. Like,
oh my
very
gosh.
isolating, you know, and the world trying to turn against you. But yeah, so the bottle definitely was my coping mechanism. And I had to like relearn how to drink socially. Like, I can have a drink now and hang out, you know? But I do feel myself slip sometimes, where I'll go like I'll drink, you know, like a day fade. It leads to night. Then the next day I'm depressed all day. And I'm like, dude, why you do this? Like, stop, dude. You know? And it's just this constant battle I have to have with myself. Like, you can't have more than 3 drinks a night, Sarah, or you're not gonna be Sarah. From the version you created of yourself and the person you're becoming, kind of goes away.
Yeah.
You feel
alcohol
sick.
is a suppressant too.
Yeah, that thing is depressing. It covers a lot of pain, though.
Absolutely. I mean, you escape and you run away from the pain, right? And that's kind of survival mode. Oftentimes with trauma or just experiences of like people who are with stress, or even folks who struggle with depression, right? It's like the pain that you're feeling is too deep and you don't want to feel it, right? So what do you do instead? Oh, I'm going to just distract myself, or I'm going to just work. People don't just end up becoming like workaholics, or, you know, you don't just drown yourself in different ways. It's because you're avoiding what you don't want to talk about, right? What you don't want to experience in your mind or the
That's true.
memories or whatever. You know,
Yeah.
you just want to tuck it away and do what you got to do and keep it pushing.
That's scary to do that because
It
I'm
is.
I'm very I got God with me. We have talks and
Yeah.
he one thing about my God is he'll show you like, hey, you got to deal with this. Or I'm gonna make you deal with it. You know, even from like friend groups to people changing. I got in a car accident like 6 months after getting shot.
Wow.
Hanging out with a friend, drinking and driving. Just drunk. We're all just drunk. And I'm just like, dude, what am I doing here? But it was God constantly showing me like, you ain't supposed to be over here.
Yeah.
You ain't supposed to be outside with these people. But I just, again, that, like he said, that deep pain, I've never said it out loud, but I definitely had a deep pain. Like it was just an empty hole. And I would just sit there and I could like feel myself just like disassociating almost with myself.
Of course, yeah.
Like I would be talking to you, but I'm not even here.
Yeah.
Like I'm just gone. And
You
that
were
was
totally
scary.
disconnected.
I was totally disconnected.
Yeah.
That is wild. Even though I'm gonna go back and watch this, I'm gonna write that word though, totally disconnected, because I like to like, go back and learn about myself because it's a lot of work.
I mean, you will, the level of trauma that you had to also is very significant, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so many different layers, and then on top of when it actually happened.
Yeah.
But even when you hear about a woman being sexually assaulted, or you know what I mean, there's so many different levels of trauma that are just, to me, it makes total sense why someone would run, like, go to the bottle, right? End up using drugs, right? Because at the end of the day, some of those memories and things that you're running from also haunt you at night.
Yeah, they do.
Right? You have the nightmares, you have the flashbacks, so that's part of also some of the signs you were saying and symptoms of trauma is that there's 4 really like major components in terms of how trauma shows up. And so it's like re-experiencing, right? You re-experience what happened or the memories, some thoughts associated. There's the changes in your mood or cognition. And then there's the physiological arousal, right? So your body keeps score, like you feel it in your body.
That book, your body keeps score.
That book is amazing. Because it does. Our body keeps score of everything. It remembers. Your body remembers. Your mind remembers everything that you've been through.
Yeah.
Right? So we could tuck it away, but you could also feel it. And then avoidance. And I would say avoidance is a heavy one with folks dealing with trauma because oftentimes you don't want to talk about your pain. You don't want to revisit it. You don't want to even express the emotions and what comes up for you. You just
It's a lot of vulnerability,
Absolutely.
And like a lot of everyone's healing process is different and journey. And I will honestly say it's probably one of the toughest things I've ever done.
Yeah.
And it sucks to say because I don't know if this is true, but I kind of feel like I'm always going to constantly heal, like be healing.
Yeah.
Because I remember I was talking to family like, oh, are you healed yet? And I just was offended. Like, am I healed yet? Like, do you not understand what happened? Like, you guys, I'm not even thinking about that. I'm just trying to take day by day, you guys.
Right.
Relax. But it just kind of sucks sometimes, though.
Healing is a journey, but even if you didn't experience trauma, right? And life is hard.
Yeah, it is.
Especially, what we're contending with right now. Like life be lifing.
Just turning on the news would give someone just anxiety.
Absolutely.
Like, this is a lot.
Absolutely. And so just, stress and anxiety are inevitable because life is just hard. So when you are on your journey of wanting to grow, to learn more about yourselves, to tackle the emotions that you may have not tackled, or to learn more about your emotions, right? And how you react to stress, react to anxiety, right? Healing is a lifelong journey. You don't ever arrive to just saying, I'm totally healed. I'm devout of
And I thought that was
experiencing
going to happen. I literally was like, I'm going to pay this lady hourly after a year. I'm great. And I was like, no, it's been 4 years. And I'm constantly healing and finding new layers of Sarah.
Yeah.
And like we said before, like we had started the show, I'm finally at the stage of like kind of grieving Malik,
Of course.
And it's wild to say after 4.5 years, like, dude, I'm just not like,
And
like
that's
he's here.
actually-
Like, what is that? Why? Like, he's just constantly in the front of my head now. Like, I'm driving and I could just see him in the passenger seat with me. Just like, I don't know what it is. Like, I found myself, I don't want to cry.
Okay.
But I found myself literally like humming a song the other day driving off of work. Then I'm like, maybe I'm just stressing from work. Maybe it's work that's causing all this. But I was like humming his name and like kind of like singing. And I was like crying on the freeway. But I don't have tints. So I was like, everyone's looking at me. Just stop crying. So I was trying to like push it off, And I was like,
Sometimes you
damn.
gotta let it flow, because I think that might be where you are also pushing.
Yeah,
parts of what
I can
happened.
feel it now. Like I'm pushing. I'm definitely pushing it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, I think with trauma too, that's the part maybe we don't talk about enough, is the grief. Right?
yeah,
Like either grieving the type of life you had before, grieving the person that was involved in the traumatic experience or accident that you had.
yeah.
Yeah, there's so many parts of it, right?
There's a lot of layers to it. There
Yeah.
is, and PTSD is a
Complex.
form of trauma, isn't it?
So PTSD, yep. So basically, it's not a form of trauma; it's post-traumatic stress disorder. So you essentially, folks can develop PTSD from trauma.
Got you.
Yeah.
And trauma, again, I feel like I have to reiterate or like explain to folks that like people will talk to me and be like, yeah, my mom died, but you've been through worse. I'm like, no, your mom dying is trauma. That hurts you. Like
it's traumatic.
there's no level. Like pain is pain, you know? And I feel like people don't understand that and they're scared.
Because I think it's based on your own experience.
yeah.
Right? You can't like tell somebody like, oh, that's traumatic.
Yeah.
No, it's my experience of what happened, right?
Exactly.
So it's essentially like my response to any distressing event.
And it's all valid. I feel like people need to hear that. Like your trauma
experience
is
is valid.
it's valid what you went through, you know? So just know that, ladies and gentlemen out there, it's valid. So if someone's like, what are some good like coping or grounding things we can do when we're experiencing like I don't know, like PTSD, anxiety, or we just need some grounding. Like, what can we do?
I mean, it depends, right? If you are really struggling with potentially traumatic symptoms, right? Symptoms of trauma, I think you want to kind of take inventory and stock of what's coming up for you. If it's rising to the point where it's affecting your mood, your cognition, so cognition meaning like your thoughts, if you're having frequent negative thoughts, if it's rising to the level of you're experiencing thoughts of suicide or self-harm or homicidal ideation, or depending on like if you are engaging in behaviors like using drugs or alcohol or substance abuse, then I would say that might be a level where you should seek help, right? Because it could be affecting your daily functioning at some point in time. But there are also, I mean, human beings are resilient, right? So there are ways in which to reconnect and tap into whatever it is that makes you feel good, right? What brings you the greatest sense of joy? What calms you? So it could be engaging in exercise. It could be going on a walk. It could be talking to friends, family, reconnecting with folks. It could also be like learning some breathing techniques, right? Doing breath work.
And you do breath work, right?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, yeah.
I do
That
breathe.
is
Yeah.
so
So I always try to like, personally, I mean, you know, now that I don't have as much time, but I think breathing exercises is always something fundamental I try to teach like my students who I work with now.
Yeah.
Just because I think it is like you have your breath everywhere you go with you, right? And so if you are in a room and somebody is frustrating you or whatever, take that breath. Don't hold it in, you know.
You're supposed to breathe into your belly, right? Like the bottom
so
of your belly.
diaphragmatic breathing.
Diaphragmatic
So
breathing, yeah.
extending your abdominal muscles and then exhaling.
That really works.
Yes,
Like
it
I've been
does.
really in tune with that lady. I'm like, oh, look
Yeah.
at me. Okay.
So doing it at night or starting your day doing it, meditation, mindfulness,
Yes.
yoga, if you're a person who like wants a combo.
Yeah.
I love yoga. I love hot yoga because I feel
You
like...
do hot yoga?
I do.
That's wild. I'm out of breath just from like the basic yoga and the stretching. I'm like, what are we doing?
Girl, I'm trying to get back into it too because, yeah, I really love it. And I think the reason why I love it is because it quiets my mind, but I also feel like it's serving my body, right?
Yes, it is.
It's detoxifying, both for my mind and my body.
It's
like
super
I get
hot in there.
Yeah, maybe it's because I don't have time to think because I'm so excited. I don't know. It's just, I feel like it's very... I don't know. Hot yoga is just on a whole different level.
A lot of people are doing that. Yeah, it works for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I would say too, especially with, you know, and I think research, there's a lot of evidence to show this, like a lot of Black and brown populations, specifically with treating trauma or stress, a lot of us hold the anxieties, the stressors in our bodies. So we exhibit psychosomatic symptoms, meaning like your heart might be racing. You might be thinking you're fine, but your heart is racing. Or your stomach might be hurting. You might be having gestational issues.
It can cause gastritis, right? Like, or like some type of...
Acid reflux.
Acid reflux.
Chronic, levels of stress, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, think about like, it's not by coincidence that, when it comes to cardiovascular disease or hypertension, like these are all things that a lot of Black and brown populations deal with, specifically older populations. And that's because a lot of what we know is it's the impact of stress, of racism, right? And not being able to find ways to heal, but also like not having it being validated, like you were saying before, right? We don't have really forms of being able to talk, right? Like it being a living room conversation and us discussing like what's going on for you, right? What are some ways that we can heal as a family or as a community? And I mean, I think we've made leaps and jumps, right? From back in the days when people were probably limited or didn't even have the opportunity, honestly. So I do want to recognize we have a lot of privileges now that our ancestors, folks before us, did not have. To be able to
they would just be like,
about.
give it to Jesus, except for everything.
Yeah, to pray about it.
Yeah, to pray about it, and that was it.
Like that was their resource, right? But now we know a lot about trauma. We know a lot about generational trauma, how it shows up in genetic markers, right? There's so much. Like,
it could show up like in your bloodline,
research.
right? Like you pass this down.
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh my God.
Yeah,
that's
transgenerational.
Yeah, transgenerational. That's scary. That is really scary. I'm really curious as to like how you feel about like African Americans seeking mental health. Like, why is there what are the barriers we're experiencing? Because there's a big stigma behind mental health, especially in our community. Yeah. Especially when we have conversations like this and how we look. Absolutely. Like, we just don't want to have these conversations. What are some of the barriers?
I mean, that's a long conversation.
Oh yeah, no, you're good. Just a little breakdown.
But no, I know. Yeah. I think there's like historical barriers naturally, right? But I do think there is oftentimes a stigma with talking about mental health, mental illness, right? But then also like not being kind of viewed or judged as being weak, right? So I think when we start off at that very level, right? There's a sign. It's like almost like deemed as a sign of weakness to talk about your emotions or to cry. But I will also say that a lot of being on this side where I am a provider, I also see a lot of the hurdles and a lot of the restrictions as it comes to folks just being able to access mental health care. Yeah. Like you even talked about it, it is very difficult. And I think part of it is because we don't treat mental health like we treat physical health, right? You go to the doctor, you say, I'm having heart palpitations or I'm having some other issue, you're assessed, you're evaluated, all this kind of stuff, right? But for you to even like demonstrate any of that in terms of, one, people taking you seriously when you're experiencing some, mental health crisis, it's just, I think we don't approach it in the right way. Yeah. Right? In the ways that we've been socialized as a country, as people, I don't think it's given the same attention as it is to physical health. That's Oftentimes we see it as separate experiences, whereas our mind and body are connected, right? What happens in your mind over time is going to show up in your body and vice versa. That's big. Yeah, that's big. That is huge. Wow. Yeah. And I think, there's also like a lot of historical issues where oftentimes, Black people are misdiagnosed at a higher rate than any other group. Yeah. When it comes to schizophrenia, paranoid schizophrenia, when it comes to bipolar disorder, just you run the gamut. Yeah. And so I think that also gives people a tremendous amount of fear. Like, I'm not going to go and be, categorized as being crazy. Yeah, or that's true. It's the image behind it too. Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, because I took this mental health class for like a day. You learned about how to help someone if they're having an episode. Yeah. He gave us a piece of paper. He said, write out everything for anxiety, for PTSD. And then the girl in the back was cancer. So I'm writing like Xanax, depression, suicidal thoughts. She's writing all these things. And then the girl in the back for cancer, you know what she wrote? Breast cancer awareness walks, meditation, yoga. It's the way we view breast cancer is different than anxiety and depression. Yeah, and it blew my mind. And I was like, oh. No, that's real. Yeah, it's real. And he was like, well, you can do yoga with anxiety, Sarah, right? And I was like, yeah, but it's the way we portray, and they're not showing us this. Like, you don't think that. No, that it has a very negative perception. It does. So of course you're not going to say, hey, I got anxiety. Yeah. Like it's kind of scary saying it. I will say though, it has been really refreshing. One of the refreshing, rewarding parts of my job is seeing how this next generation is really like turning our heads about how we perceived mental health and mental illness, both mental wellness and mental illness. And just being so comfortable, so vulnerable enough to talk about like anxiety, stress, depression, what have you, but also being advocates for themselves. Like, I'm experiencing in this and I know this is not normal.
Yeah. No, literally, my nephew at 20, he is just on it. Like, I'm so proud of him. I was shocked. I was not expecting
honestly,
it.
I'm always, and so that's like, even with my group where I'm running this group with college students, these women are just like badass women. Like I never would be able to even cry in front of my mom. And you know, just those are the things that you think about is like how you've stuffed your own emotions sometimes away just by not having the normalization of these conversations or just someone saying, it's okay, your emotions are valid. You can go ahead and cry.
Yo, that is big when people tell you that.
And I'm not even saying like, my mom is great at understanding things, but I just, I have a clear memory of as a grown woman being stressed out and just letting a tear drop. And my mom just like lost it because she was scared. Like it's the fear. Like I don't want my daughter crying. Yeah. Right. But you have to allow a child to cry.
You do.
An adult to cry.
Yeah, you do. I'm learning that.
Girl.
Seeing our parents cry though is a different kind of pain for me. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like for everyone, it's just seeing our parents and then knowing what they went through. Yeah. It's like I don't want to be the reason for your crying.
Yeah, for your pain.
My therapist at one point did say, "This is therapy for her too, Sarah. You can't rob her of her therapy." I was like, "You're right, but I can go to the other room. You just cry alone because I can't see it.
I know.
It hurts so much.
Yeah, it's
hard.
My God. It's hard.
Yeah, I don't like doing that. I don't think I'm gonna do it for a while. So as a mental health professional, you have any like? Do you have any advice for any therapists out there to make their therapy like culturally relevant to feel more accessible for like Black people?
Yeah, definitely. I think, well, the financial part is one huge part, right? In creating more access points for folks who may not afford to go in and pay $150 a week.
Yeah, why is that Medicare and community health group don't have therapists?
I don't know, girl.
That's so
medical
weird.
Insurances. You know, part of it is, because I don't want anybody in private practice telling me something, but
don't
part of it is that these insurance, you know, I do think a lot of therapists actually really do, like in psychology, in MFT, like there is a social justice frame. Like we do actually want to help people out. That is like the solid core, right? And by doing that, you do want to either provide sliding scale or a structure where you are taking enough clients so that you may be able to provide pro bono, right?
Okay.
But these insurance groups make it very difficult because the reimbursement is very small. Oh. Like sometimes I think it's like $60 or $25. Yeah.
To the therapist?
Yes. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, no, but that's still wild though. I mean, it sounds like that would probably be
So I think that's a major barrier too. Like they have to make a living, but then you also want to provide accessible resources. But I also will just say that I think on both ends, right? It's a relationship. So being informed and being trained and being knowledgeable of what cultural competency looks like, not assuming that every Black person that comes into your office is the same person, has experienced the same things, right? So kind of the implicit biases or the stereotypes, like curbing that or, you know, doing your own type of work, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to sit in a room if you haven't done your own work.
That's very true. And I think a lot of times, like I had to maneuver between a couple of therapists before I found the right one. I think they forget, like, hey, I see you judging me. Like you could kind of feel someone judging you.
And so I'm glad you said that because the other part I was going to say is as a consumer, you don't got to stay with that therapist.
Yeah, you don't.
No.
Like, say it again for the people in the back.
You don't have to stay with that therapist if you were having a bad experience because there are amazing therapists out there.
Yeah.
And I hate to hear this when someone says like you've just got them through the door and they're like, she was horrible.
Yeah.
And I'm like, please don't give up. Find somebody else. I'll help you find somebody else. And that's the other thing. There are so many great like clinics now, groups that are focused on, you know, working with underrepresented populations. There are folks like Black psychologist groups, Black therapist groups. So there is the resources out there. There's therapy for Black girls, right? And there's directory with Black psychologists, therapists who work with Black women, right? So there are a number of different resources that exist. And even like far more than when I was starting out in grad school, I will say. So we've
Yeah,
made a
times
lot
have
of
changed.
advances. Yeah, I
Times
think
have changed.
it's just the disparities that exist is with being able to provide. Like in my estimation, I just feel like therapy should be free for everyone. Right?
I'm really big on that.
Yeah,
And that's why I started my
same.
nonprofit. I was like, you know what? We're going to figure this out together.
Yeah,
Because we
absolutely.
need this. Like, we need it.
Definitely. And I do think, there are different services, even in San Diego, that are trying to do that or try to provide like low cost, affordable. I've heard of as low as like $15.
That's great.
Yeah, and there are therapists too. It's just part of it is too is like being able to connect with folks and not shying away from like just asking questions, right? I think a lot of people shy away from asking questions because they're fearful, like, oh, this person's gonna judge me, or this person's gonna assume that I have some issues or whatever. But whatever, like, just ask, and you may not know who may know somebody, right? That's part of like I think that's part of the challenge too. Is like we need to build a community where it becomes more appreciated, we feel more empowered to talk about these issues, and not just like isolated and feeling alienated when you are experiencing whatever it is that you are.
Well, I will say, seeing more of us, like you yourself, come to spaces like that it's amazing. Like, it helps, you know.
I mean, I'm always willing.
Yeah, I know you're like
up.
amazing. I really like no for real. Like, I really appreciate this because like the work you've done and like just everything. Even that YouTube video of you, I watched like an hour. It was like a seminar.
Okay? I know. You gotta send it to me.
I'm gonna send it to you because I was like, yo, she's just so dope. And the way you talk about things, you're very passionate and you want to help.
Yeah, I mean, I really do believe in like people's resiliency. I think that's the best way I think I could put it, for lack of a better word. And I do think, people you can never judge a book by its cover. There are folks who you meet and you're like, wow, I would have never even thought that you've been through something like that. Just like you have a powerful story. And so don't let anyone dim your light or tell you that you're not deserving of whatever it is that you want to work towards or anything.
Yeah.
Like, you just kind of sometimes have to shut that noise out.
No, literally.
Because sometimes that noise then becomes our own noises too, right? And I think that becomes part of the challenge that people have in being able to just shut it off.
Yeah, I definitely still experience that. Sometimes I feel like even with this podcast and my approach that I'm doing from what I used to do, it's like a 180. And folks are just like, you just want to live in your trauma, or you just want to do this. And I'm just like, no, I just want to help people because I was really alone. Like, this is free for you to watch and listen to and gain something from it, And it's a really weird community. Yeah. It's my own community. So I'm like, you guys, like, I'm doing this because, like, it's meaningful and, like, freak, we need it,
Well, you only need your own validation.
Yeah, it's true. I'm learning that.
And sometimes people be hating.
Yeah, that's true. They do be hating. I'd be like, why is he mad at me? Like, I'm just trying to live.
Sometimes it just doesn't make sense, but I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that's true. I like that. The big H. They just be hating. So, quick question. For someone who is struggling right now but isn't ready to see a therapist, what's one thing they can do today to take better care of their mental health?
I think getting back to your normal routine, especially if you're a person who thrives on structure or like having something you do consistently is always good. So one thing, we recommend, even with when you've experienced a traumatic experience, is like go back to your normal routine.
Okay.
And then I will say, like, if you are struggling, like, go outside. Get out of your house, get out of your room if that's something that is like a trigger for you or that you feel kind of stifled by.
Yeah.
Get outside, but also like reach out to people. You never know who might. It doesn't have to be your family. It doesn't have to be a brother or sister. Like, reach out to anyone. Call someone, right? They might be the person to just lift your mood, take you out to eat, go up for coffee, invite people. Like, invite someone to have lunch with you.
That usually what happens too, which is so crazy.
Really?
I'd be in a mood, like a very sad mood, and then I'm like, call someone. But I promise you, I hear something in me like, no, don't call them. Don't worry about it. Just marinate in this darkness. And I would feel it.
Yeah.
And it's so scary. Then when I call like my brother DK and I'm like, hey, he's like, oh, I'm actually in the area. You want to hang out? I'm like, oh yeah, so let's go for a walk. And I'm like, see, and I just
sometimes
like,
that's all God.
It really, God works in mysterious ways. And I always tell people, if you ever feel like you're fighting something, you just gotta I would sometimes like punch the air and get up out the bed.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I refuse to sit here.
Listen,
like, I can't.
whatever gets you out of that bed.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like just doing the opposite, right? If you are feeling triggered or urged, you feel the urge to just lie in bed all day, and you've been lying in bed for like 2 days, do the opposite.
That's true.
Take a shower, take a cold shower. If it's at night, take a hot shower, make you feel a little bit better. Go outside, go for a walk, go for a run if you're a person who loves to exercise, or, reach out to someone. But it's also okay to go to therapy, right?
Yeah, it is okay.
It's okay it's actually a sign of courage and being able to be vulnerable, right? There is nothing wrong with therapy. I feel like anyone who wants to go to therapy should be able to go to therapy. You don't need to have a problem necessarily.
Yeah. It's not, see, I like that. You don't necessarily need to have a problem to go to therapy. I think people think they need to experience something, like some trauma or whatever.
No,
it's like, no, you can just go to therapy to talk to someone and get another perspective. Like,
sometimes you just need a reset. Sometimes you've fallen off kind of like your path and you need to get back on the path. And again, life can throw out some distractions. You may take a detour. So,
yeah.
Things too, it's always like, I always have folks who tell me, like, when they start therapy, they're like, oh, I think I had this vision of what I wanted to do. And then they end up talking about so many other things, right? Because there's so much that we tuck away again, right? Yeah. And we avoid on a daily basis because we think like, oh, we don't have time to be thinking about that. We just got to keep it moving. And that's part of like our adaptation, right? And in some ways it helps us, right? It keeps us successful, it keeps us ambitious, it keeps us productive. I think there's a healthy amount of stress that we need to be able to perform at a specific level. But at the same time, it's also important to be able to pour into ourselves and to practice that self-care. And I think, being able to give yourself that break, right?
Yeah.
That hour of just reserved time for you, you're more than deserving of that.
Definitely.
And if someone is not open to therapy or not wanting to speak to someone, then find what speaks to you. There are so many different things that, like there's a lot of somatic-based therapies too that just rely on like listening to a sound bath or listening to certain music, doing breathing exercises, whatever it is that speaks to you, right?
Yeah, everyone's so
find
different.
it.
Yeah. But you gotta want to find it though.
Absolutely.
You gotta. Like I think people forget. It kind of it starts with you.
Yeah,
like you should go to therapy, but it's like there's a work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And it's a process.
Yeah.
So show yourself.
That's why I said sometimes it just means like get out of your bed, get out of your house, right? Literally just take one foot.
Just take a shower.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, literally, I love that.
Take one step at a time.
So as we're almost about to wrap up, I just have like a couple more questions for you. Well, it's actually like the last question. What's one piece of advice you'd give someone starting their healing journey? I mean, just besides the one step, is there anything else you would want to like?
I would just say be patient.
Yeah.
Definitely be patient and give yourself grace. I think oftentimes, we may have a goal in mind, or we might think like, oh, this is what my healing is going to look like. And that might not be what it looks like, right? And sometimes it gets more difficult before you actually feel more relieved. You may feel worse than you get when you feel better, right?
Yeah.
Things might feel like life is falling apart, but that doesn't mean that you're not going in the right direction. It's just some insight that you needed to learn or to be exposed to. And then I would just say give yourself grace. I think a lot of us are just so hard on ourselves. We're hard on each other.
Yeah.
But a lot of folks too, like we are also battling so many like negative thoughts, or just this is where we live oftentimes.
Yes.
And so to be able to shut that off, to not listen to that voice, right? And to be able to just, give yourself grace.
Show yourself grace.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Absolutely.
So where can people find you, connect with you if they want to learn more about what you do? Or are you doing, what is it called, individual practices? Or like how do you?
So that's been paused, but I'm trying to bring it back.
Okay.
So
take me as a client.
So I'm hoping to get my website is currently under construction. So I will be hopefully within the next year getting all of that off the ground. But my email, I'm not on social media quite yet. I am on Facebook.
Yes.
That's how you found me.
That's how I found you.
But through email or like anyone who has questions, I'm always open. Like if folks have questions and they want to email me.
What's your email? I'm going to drop it at the bottom too, that's why.
You want me to say it?
Yeah, you can say it. Yeah.
ZBERHE1 at gmail.com.
Thank you.
But I'm also in San Diego State, so you can look me
you're
up
always
on
there.
the website.
So do we have to be a student in order to go to this?
Yeah, you do.
Oh.
We do. But I'm always willing to connect folks. If I can't see someone, I'm always willing to connect someone in the community or off campus. Because I think the lovely part about being therapists is like there's only so many of us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the hard part, right? But we oftentimes are, by some degree of separation, we're very connected.
Okay, perfect. Anything you would like the world to know before we head on out?
No, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was a gift. I appreciate you, and I really do feel really inspired by your story. So just keep at it, sis.
Yeah, we're going to keep going.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.